The tavern on Varexis Prime was a hollow echo of its former self, a relic from a time when soldiers and smugglers roamed the desert planet like ghosts. Flickering hollow ads struggled against the dusty twilight filtering through cracked windows, casting weak glimmers on chipped tables and battered walls. Kothvar sat alone in the darkest corner, a half-empty glass of tar-like liquor cradled in his three-fingered hand. His face, weathered and scarred, bore the weight of decades spent at war. The metallic sheen in his eyes wasn't just the reflection of neon. It was the cold burn of memories too deep to forget. The tavern's murmur shifted when a young alien woman approached. Mara was a historian, a seeker of forgotten truths. Her eyes burned with questions, but her voice was steady. Kothvar, she began, sliding a worn datapad across the table. We need your story. The galaxy remembers the wars only through the official reports, sterile and sanitized. But you were there, what happened? For a long moment, Kothvar didn't answer. The silence stretched like a chasm between two worlds. Then, with a suddenness that startled Mara, he slammed his glass down. The liquid spilled, dark and sticky against the wood. War is not a story for the telling, he growled, voice rough, like gravel. It is a wound that never heals. Mira didn't flinch. If not you, then who? The galaxy's future depends on understanding what we faced, what we might face again. Kothvar's gaze shifted to the tavern's entrance. The door creaked open with a gust of hot desert wind. 3 figures stepped inside, rough mercenaries, faces twisted in shadows. They scanned the room, their eyes settling on Kothvar. You're not welcome here, one said, voice low and dangerous. Kothvar rose slowly, every movement deliberate. Neither are you. The tension snapped. In a blur, Kothvar drew a compact energy pistol from beneath his cloak. The mercenaries lunged. The tavern exploded into chaos. Shots cracked like thunder. Tables splintered. Kothvar moved with uncanny precision. Years of combat etched into every muscle, every breath. He took down one attacker with a blast to the chest, then ducked. Behind a pillar as another fired wildly. Mira's eyes widened, shock giving way to awe. This broken old warrior was a force to be reckoned with. Suddenly, a grenade landed at Kothvar's feet. The timer blinked red. Get down, he shouted, grabbing Mira and throwing her behind the bar just as the explosion tore through the room. When the smoke cleared, Kothvar stood alone, breathing heavily, his cloak scorched. The mercenaries lay unconscious or worse. The tavern was wrecked, but he was alive. Mira scrambled to her feet, heart pounding. Why did they come for you? Kothvar's eyes darkened. Because I know things the galaxy shouldn't know. Things that could burn worlds. The young historian swallowed hard. Then you will tell me. Kothvar looked at her, really looked, as if weighing her soul against the ghosts that haunted him. Finally, he nodded. Very well. But know this. Once you hear the truth, it can never be unheard, and the cost may be more than you're willing to pay. He pulled the hood of his cloak over his head and gestured toward the door. Come. There is a place where the past still lives. Together they slipped into the Varexis night. The stars above burned cold and distant, indifferent to the secrets waiting to unravel beneath them. The desert air outside the ruined tavern was sharp and cold under the twin moons of Varexis Prime. Kothvar and Mara moved quickly, their boots kicking up dust as they left the settlement behind. The farther they went, the quieter the world seemed, as if the planet itself was holding its breath. After a few minutes, Kothvar halted beside a jagged outcrop of rock. He crouched and drew a small, battered hollow recorder from beneath his cloak. The device flickered weakly, then stabilized, casting a pale blue glow on his scarred face. Here, he said, voice low and raw. I will tell you what they never told us, what the official records buried deep beneath propaganda. Mira leaned forward, eyes wide. They called it first contact. A moment of peace, diplomacy, and unity. But the truth is uglier. The humans came not as ambassadors, but as hunters. Kothvar's gaze hardened. The Galactic Council expected diplomacy. Instead, humanity tested us like lab rats. They studied our weaknesses, probed our defenses with calculated strikes that left no evidence. Their soldiers were shadows, ghost-like figures who slipped into systems undetected, sabotaging communications, stealing secrets. Mira's fingers trembled as she tapped notes into her datapad. They waited for the galaxy to trust them, Kothvar continued. Then they struck, but not with overwhelming force. They used chaos, fear, and disinformation. Entire fleets vanished without a trace. Planets were destabilized by rumors of human atrocities. They didn't just wage war, they shattered willpower. Mira's brow furrowed. But the Council condemned humanity, right? There must be records of the battles. Kothvar let out a bitter laugh. Records exist, but they are sanitized. They say humans fought honorably, that peace was broken only by misunderstanding. But the truth is, humans fought like wolves. He stood and brushed dust from his cloak. On Juru 9, my unit learned their true nature. The name sent a chill down Mira's spine. They expected a straightforward battle, conventional troops, standard tactics. What we found was a nightmare. Humans moved through ruins like predators, silent and deadly. Their weapons were primitive but effective. Blades, projectile weapons modified with technology that amplified pain and fear. They used darkness as a weapon. Night vision goggles allowed them to hunt at night, stalking our men like prey. Kothvar's voice dropped to a whisper. We lost half our squad in the first night. No one saw the killers coming. There was no honor, just brutal slaughter. Mira swallowed hard. Why? Why fight like this? Because, Kothvar said, humanity does not fight for territory or glory. They fight to break the enemy, physically, mentally, and spiritually. They wage war as an act of pure survival, stripped of the pretenses other species hold onto. They embrace chaos and use it as a weapon. The holo recorder beeped softly, signaling a data transmission incoming. Kothvar glanced at it but ignored the message. Is that why your attackers came after you? Mira asked cautiously. To stop you from speaking? He nodded slowly. Because if the galaxy remembers humanity as just another enemy, it underestimates what we truly faced, and that underestimation will be our doom. Mira's mind raced. Every history book she'd read painted humans as unpredictable but ultimately manageable. But Kothvar's words hinted at something darker, an enemy that turned warfare into an art of terror. Tell me about your squad, she urged. What happened to your comrades? Kothvar's eyes glazed over, memories surfacing like broken shards. They died one by one in ways too cruel to recount. But their deaths taught me the truth. That humanity's war is never fair. It is a war that eats away hope. Mira reached out, placing a tentative hand on his arm. Then why did you survive? Kothvar's gaze met hers, fierce and haunted. Because I was lucky, and because I learned to fight their way, to become a shadow among shadows. Sudden howl pierced the silence, the distant call of desert predators. Mira shivered. What happens now? She asked. Kothvar looked to the stars. Now, we prepare, because humanity's story is far from over. The holo recorder's screen flickered again. This time, Kothvar tapped it open. A new transmission blinked into view, a human voice, calm but resolute. We do not seek war. But if war seeks us, it will find the last species it ever meets. The words hung in the air between them, a promise and a warning. The ruins of Juru 9 were a graveyard swallowed by dust and shadow. Kothvar stood at the edge of the shattered mining colony, memories flooding back like cold water in the desert night. The twisted skeletons of metal buildings loomed like broken bones beneath the twin moons, their jagged edges cutting into the sky. Every corner, every crumbling wall whispered the ghosts of that battle, the screams, the silence, and the relentless hunt. This is where it began to change, Kothvar said quietly. Where we learned that humans do not fight like any enemy we'd ever faced. He traced a finger over a scar on his forearm, a souvenir from the fight. The alien historians and soldiers who came after him had painted Juru 9 as a tactical victory, a foothold gained after brutal combat. But Kothvar knew the truth. The victory had come at a price far beyond anything recorded. The humans were not soldiers in the traditional sense. They were hunters, relentless, merciless, and terrifyingly cunning. On the first night, Kothvar's squad had settled into the ruins, believing their advanced sensors would detect any movement. But the humans disappeared into the darkness like smoke. No warnings, no calls. Just silence. Then the killing began. One by one, Kothvar's comrades vanished. At first, they thought it was sabotage, traps rigged to explosives or environmental hazards. But the bodies they found told a darker story. Ripped throats, missing limbs, marks of blades sharpened not just to kill, but to terrorize. "They don't just want to kill you," Kothvar said, his voice thick with something between anger and sorrow. "They want to break you." The humans moved in small packs, blending with shadows, speaking in guttural sounds that made no sense to alien ears. Their eyes gleamed with a wild light, reflecting the fear they sowed. One night, Kothvar stumbled into a narrow alleyway. There, illuminated by a faint glow, stood a human soldier, or what was left of one. The man's face was smeared with dirt and blood, and his eyes shone with a feral hunger. He didn't hesitate. The soldier lunged with a makeshift blade, slicing deep into Kothvar's arm. The pain was searing, but worse was the look in the human's eyes, not hatred but joy. "They fight with something more than strength," Kothvar said, his jaw clenched. "They fight with madness, and they love it." The fight was brutal and close. Kothvar barely escaped, clutching the wound that would never fully heal. By dawn, half of his squad was dead or missing. The ruins echoed with silence, broken only by the whispers of wind and the distant howls of the desert beasts. But the worst was yet to come. On the third night, Kothvar heard screams, not of pain, but terror. He found a small group of human soldiers surrounding a wounded alien comrade. The humans taunted him, laughing as they closed in. They spoke words that meant nothing to Kothvar but carried an unmistakable cruelty. Then, without warning, one of them plunged a knife into the alien's throat. Slow, deliberate, savoring the moment. It was a killing ritual, a message. "They wanted us to know," Kothvar said. "We were prey, and they were the hunters. They hunted not for honor or victory, but for pleasure." The memories tightened around him like chains. Mara watched silently, the weight of his story settling in her bones. "What kept you alive?" she asked softly. Kothvar's eyes darkened. "Fear, and something else. Stubbornness. I learned to move like them, to think like them, to be one of the shadows." He tapped a small device on his wrist. A flicker of light revealed a map of the ruins marked with red dots, sites of the dead, his comrades. "Many believed the battle was a success," he said, voice heavy. "But those ruins are haunted, not by ghosts, but by what humanity brought to war. A darkness we can't understand, but must never forget." Mara swallowed, her mind racing with the implications. If they fight like this, what chance do we have? Kothvar's gaze lifted to the stars. "It's not about chance. It's about respect and fear." The ruins of Juru 9 stretched behind them, silent and unforgiving. A reminder that humanity's war was not just fought with weapons, but with terror itself. The dim light of Mara's quarters flickered as the ancient datapads hummed softly. On the table, stacks of encrypted archives, stolen military logs, and forgotten transcripts sprawled before her like a maze. But one document stood out. Doctrine 23, Controlled Chaos. Kothvar sat opposite her, his scarred hands wrapped around a steaming cup of bitter synth tea. His eyes, usually so guarded, revealed a flicker of something darker, the shadow of old wounds. "This doctrine," Mira whispered, scrolling through the data. "It's more than strategy. It's psychological warfare. They weaponized Madness. Kothvar nodded slowly. I was once a prisoner of their mind games. It is not enough to kill the body. They seek to shatter the mind, bend it, break it. He leaned forward, voice barely above a whisper. They captured me after Juru 9. I was taken to a facility deep in the asteroid belt, a place they called the Forge. There, they subjected me to experiments not just physical, but mental. Kothvar's gaze darkened, haunted by memories. They used virtual reality, drugs, sensory deprivation, to warp my perception of reality. I could not trust my own mind. Time lost meaning. Faces merged and twisted. I was trapped in endless cycles of terror and confusion. Mira shuddered. How did you survive? By clinging to fragments of truth, he said. A word, a name, a memory. But even that was tested. They tried to turn me against my own people, implanting false memories and loyalties. Some prisoners never escaped the Forge hole. Mira's fingers trembled as she copied the files to her datapad. The galaxy has no idea this happened. These atrocities are buried beneath treaties and silence. Kothvar's eyes flashed, with anger. They want to hide what makes humans dangerous, not just their weapons, but their minds. They fight war on a level beyond muscle and metal. A sharp beep cut through the silence. Mira's datapad flashed a warning. Unauthorized data access detected. Her heart raced. They're monitoring me. Kothvar's voice hardened. They don't want this story told. Outside, the wind howled across Virexis Prime's barren plains, carrying the distant cries of desert beasts. Inside, tension thickened like a storm. Mira's mind raced through the implications. If humans mastered psychological warfare to this degree, entire civilizations could crumble before a single shot was fired. Their unpredictability wasn't madness. It was calculated chaos. We need to warn the Council, Mira said, voice steady despite the fear. They must prepare for what lies ahead. Kothvar shook his head. The Council is divided. Many want to believe humanity is contained, weakened. But I have seen what they become when pushed. He leaned closer, voice dropping to a conspiratorial tone. There are rumors of gene modifications, warriors enhanced beyond normal limits. Some were once civilians, twisted into weapons by human science. These are the true horrors, hidden behind diplomacy and treaties. Mira's mind reeled. Are these super soldiers? Kothvar nodded grimly. Faster, stronger, more resilient. And they fight with the same madness I saw on Juru 9. Controlled madness. Suddenly, the door hissed open. A shadow slipped inside and an informant with urgent news. Mira, the Council has intercepted a human broadcast, the figure whispered. Project Helios has been reactivated. Kothvar's eyes widened in alarm. Helios was never meant to be turned on again. Mira frowned. What is Project Helios? It's a warning system, Kothvar said grimly. A final line of defense Earth built long ago. When it activates, it means humanity is ready to unleash their true power. The informant's voice dropped. Some fear it signals an imminent attack. Mira looked to Kothvar. What should we do? Expose the truth, Kothvar said, voice heavy with warning. Before the galaxy is too late. But as the data streamed across Mira's datapad, another chilling thought took root. The deeper they dug, the more they risked awakening a force no one was prepared to face. The memory struck Kothvar like a cold blow, vivid, raw, and bitter. He sat across from Mira in the shadows of a forgotten cave on Virexis Prime, his voice low and steady, weaving a tale of horror and defiance. It was during a raid on a human outpost in the Revanth system, he began. Our forces had managed to capture a single human soldier, a man who should have been just another prisoner, easily broken. Mira leaned forward, captivated. But this man was different. Kothvar's eyes darkened. From the moment we took him, he refused to speak. No words, no cries, no pleas, just silence. They tortured him, not with brutality, but with patience. Hours turned to days, and still he said nothing. We tried everything, Kothvar said, voice tightening. Pain, isolation, mind probes. But he remained unbroken. One night, Kothvar was summoned to the prison cell. The human prisoner sat slumped against the cold metal wall, bruised but unbowed. He looked at me, Kothvar whispered, and spoke his first words. The alien shivered, recalling the moment. He said, "You think this ends with me? It never ends." The calmness in the prisoner's voice was terrifying, like a prophecy. Moments later, alarms screamed through the outpost. The human's cell door exploded inwards, releasing a blinding flash. The prisoner had detonated a hidden bomb, a final act of defiance. The explosion ripped through the compound, killing Kothvar's squad and the prisoner himself. Kothvar closed his eyes, the memory burning like fire. That moment changed everything, he said. It wasn't just a sacrifice. It was a messaging that humans wield death as a weapon, that their resolve runs deeper than any logic we know. Mira's voice was barely a whisper. A soldier willing to die just to ensure destruction. Yes, Kothvar said. And not just destruction, chaos. The enemy does not fear death, they embrace it. He stood pacing the cave as the wind howled outside. After that raid, our commanders warned us. Humanity fights differently, not just with weapons, but with their will to destroy. Mira's datapad beeped softly, a reminder of the countless files still unread. But this story, the prisoner's last laugh, lingered heavy in the air. Kothvar looked at her, eyes filled with a weary resolve. The galaxy must understand this. If we do not, humanity will burn us all. Mira nodded slowly, her mind spinning with the weight of what she'd heard. In the dark silence, the cave seemed to hold its breath, as if the ghosts of that doomed outpost still whispered warnings to those willing to listen. The bitter wind of Virexis Prime whipped through the canyon as Kothvar led Mira deeper into the rocky labyrinth. The ruined outpost of Juru 9 was behind them, but its scars lingered, etched not just in the landscape but in his soul. After the raid, Kothvar said, voice rough like gravel, I knew I couldn't fight humanity with my old tactics. Their chaos required something different, a predator's instinct. Mira listened intently as they reached a hidden alcove, where a flickering holomap illuminated the jagged walls. My commanders called it desperation, Kothvar continued, but I call it evolution. He tapped the map, revealing a sequence of combat simulations, close quarters, ambush tactics, guerrilla warfare. I began to study them. Their unpredictability, their ruthlessness. To survive, I had to become the hunter. For weeks, Kothvar trained in secret, honing skills that went beyond traditional warfare. He learned to move silently through ruins, to blend shadows with patience, and to strike without warning. His body grew leaner, faster, and his mind sharper, every sense tuned to detect the slightest hint of danger, but the transformation came at a cost. My men called me mad, he admitted. They didn't understand that to fight humans I had to embrace what they feared, chaos and fear itself. Mira's eyes narrowed. Did it work? Kothvar's lips curled in a grim smile. It did. I survived. Yet survival meant hard choices. He recalled the night his squad faced a pack of human hunters stalking the ruins. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and exhausted. Most of my squad wanted to surrender, he said, but I refused. We set traps, ambush points, everything to make the humans pay for every inch. The battle was savage. Kothvar led from the shadows, striking with deadly precision. We killed more than half their number, he said, but not without losing most of my own. That night, staring into the ruins' darkness, Kothvar felt something shift within. A cold acceptance of the hunter's path. Humanity's war is not clean or honorable, he said quietly. It is a fight for survival that strips away everything but the will to live. Mira looked at him, searching his eyes. Do you regret it? Kothvar hesitated, then shook his head. No. To fight humans on their terms is to risk becoming like them. But it was the only way I could protect those I cared for. The wind outside moaned through the canyon, carrying echoes of battles past and futures yet to come. Mira tapped her datapad. Your story must be heard. Kothvar nodded, the weight of his journey heavy but necessary. For the galaxy to survive, he said, we must face the truth, that humanity fights with the heart of a hunter. And if we do not adapt, we will be the hunted. The council chambers buzzed with quiet tension as Mira prepared to upload the data. Screens flickered with fragments of Kothvar's testimony, hollow maps of human battlefields, and encrypted files exposing decades of concealed war crimes and psychological warfare. The sterile room, designed for diplomacy, now felt like a war room. Mira's fingers hovered over the console, hesitation catching in her throat. The weight of the decision pressed down. Once this truth spread, there would be no turning back. Kothvar stood silently beside her, his eyes reflecting the harsh glow of the holoscreens. It must be done, he said. The galaxy deserves to know what humanity is. Mira took a steadying breath and pressed upload. Across star systems, broadcasts began pulsing through secure networks, reaching military outposts, diplomatic stations, and civilian hubs alike. Kothvar's story spilled into every channel, piercing the comfortable ignorance that had protected humanity's reputation for so long. Reactions were swift and fierce. At first, disbelief. Propaganda, some said. Alien exaggeration. But the evidence was overwhelming. Captured transmissions, first-hand accounts, medical records of psychological torture, all corroborating the grim reality of human warfare. Military leaders convened emergency meetings. Diplomats scrambled to contain the fallout and public opinion fractured. On Varexis Prime, Mira watched as messages flooded in, some thanking her for bravery, others condemning her as a traitor, stirring panic. Kothvar's warning echoed, louder than ever. Humanity was not just unpredictable, but dangerous. Then came the response from Earth. A terse broadcast interrupted every channel. A human spokesperson, calm but resolute, addressed the galaxy. We do not deny our methods, the voice said. Humanity fights for survival, as we always have. Our enemies underestimate us at their peril. The message was clear. Earth was ready, watching, waiting. Mira's datapad buzzed with urgent updates. Fleets were mobilizing, alliances shifting. The fragile peace threatened to shatter. Kothvar's expression hardened. They know we've seen behind the curtain, he said. And now, the hunt truly begins. Mira's heart pounded. What happens next? The galaxy must prepare for war, Kothvar replied. But more than that, we must learn to fight with the heart of the hunter, or we will fall. The chamber doors slid open with a harsh clang. A delegation of Galactic Council enforcers entered, their faces grim. You're coming with us, their leader said to Mira. Kothvar stepped forward. Is this how you treat truth-tellers? He demanded. The enforcers exchanged cold glances. Orders are orders, the leader replied. Mira glanced at Kothvar, a silent promise passing between them. As they were led away, the screens around them continued to pulse, broadcasting the dark truths of human warfare, forever changing the galaxy's fate. The cold metal walls of the detention chamber hummed with sterile silence. Mira sat on the edge of the narrow cot, her wrists bound by energy cuffs that dimmed her every movement. Across from her, Kothvar leaned against the wall, eyes closed but mind racing. Their broadcast had shattered the veneer of peace across the galaxy, igniting fear, anger, and uncertainty in equal measure. The truth was out. Humanity was no longer the unpredictable wild card, but a calculated, ruthless force that the universe must reckon with. The Galactic Council's enforcers had deemed them threats, voices stirring unrest at a time when unity was desperately needed. But Mira and Kothvar knew their words were seeds planted in soil too dry to ignore. Days passed, marked only by the slow drip of coolant and distant echoes of council debates. Then the cell's door hissed open. A figure stepped inside, A woman in a council uniform, her expression unreadable. Mira Kothvar, she began, voice steady. Your revelations have forced the council to face a truth long ignored. Preparations are underway, but we must also prepare for war. Mira's gaze sharpened. And what of us? The officer hesitated, then offered a faint nod. You will be released, with conditions. Kothvar pushed off the wall, a rare glimmer of hope breaking his hardened demeanor. We've only just begun. Outside the chamber, the galaxy stirred. Worlds once complacent now bolstered defenses. Fleets were recalled. Scientists raced to understand and counter the genetic and psychological warfare humanity wielded. Alliances shifted, some seeking protection, others questioning their loyalties. Mira and Kothvar stood on the observation deck of the council flagship, watching the stars blur as fleets mobilized. The galaxy is changing, Mira said softly. Because of what we revealed, Kothvar nodded. And because of what humanity has become. They are the darkness in the void, chaotic, relentless, and unyielding. But not unstoppable, Mira added. If we learn, adapt, maybe, we can survive. A sudden alert flashed across the deck, a transmission from Earth. The message was cryptic but clear. Prepare. The hunter awakens. A chill ran down Mira's spine. Kothvar's voice was a low rumble. The real war is only beginning. We must decide. Will we be prey or hunters? As the flagship accelerated toward the heart of the galaxy, their fates, intertwined with a future shadowed by war, uncertainty and the fierce will to survive. The stars held their breath,